Hey heroes, this is your resident string player Darian.
And this is Angela, your certified brass player.
And you're listening to Hero Talk, the show that is here to talk about real life
and real women in music.
Okay, let's get started. Hi heroes, today with us is the great American contemporary composer Augusta Reed-Thomas. I'm a huge fan and I'm so excited to have her here today. She's a university professor of composition and music at the University of Chicago. She has won numerous prizes for her works and her music has been premiered and performed around the world by many chamber groups and orchestras. She is a Pulitzer finalist and she was the longest serving Mead composer in residence at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Her discography includes 90 commercially recorded CDs and has been permanently secured as a composer in the pantheon of American composers of the 20th and 21st centuries, according to music critics. And we are so excited to have you here today with us.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Darian and Angela. I'm really honored to be included in your podcast and to be able to meet you in this forum and to be able to meet your listeners. Thank you.
Oh, well, honestly, I feel like I need to say thank you more than anyone else. I have to be careful not to fangirl too much. I have played a lot of your works because I'm such a huge fan. You're probably my favorite living composer right now. I totally relate to your music and I just love it so much. And I'm so excited to be talking to you. You're such an inspiration.
Well, I am very humbled by your words and I really love writing for violin, Darian.
I appreciate that.
As you figured out, since you've probably played a bunch of them, as you referred to. So I deeply appreciate that you've taken the time to learn them and, embody them and share them with your audiences. Mm-hmm. And thank you.
Yeah, we recently played Plea for Peace. Actually yesterday. Mm-hmm. I've also played the Toft Serenade and me and my pianist had a really good time with that one.
I've heard that one's hard.
Yeah. We had a good time too though. My pianist was like, okay, I have to actually practice this. And then he was like, I get it. I really like it now.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a beautiful instrument, the violin, and the rich history, the repertoire. Myriads of composers have written so well for it. And then the combo of violin and piano, as is in Toft Serenade, again, classic instrumentation. And what I was trying in that piece to do is really just do it my own way, as it were, and as you well know, it's a short piece, but the first half is extremely lyrical and sort of long lines on the string in the bow arm. Mm-hmm. And then the second movement is really virtuosic fast and flourishing in both parts. So it's kind of a 2-part little recital piece.
Oh yeah, it was really fun to play, and as well it's really engaging. And I also really appreciate that you write the same piece for different instruments. I've played incantation and I know that it's not only for violin, which is really nice. What inspires you to do that, to write for the same piece for different instruments?
Oh, well, thanks again. Yeah, with Incantation, which is a solo violin piece I wrote about 32 years ago, I think. I mean, literally a million years ago. And it was made for a very particular occasion that was quite moving. And it's like a 5-minute sort of incantation in some ways, I guess. Very like a cantilena line or something, but with quite a lot of emotion in it as well.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess maybe 20 years ago, a violist is like, oh, I've heard your incantation so many times, I want to play it. So I was like, oh, okay. So the reason I made the viola version is thanks to a violist who said they wanted to play it. And then there was a bunch of cellists. They're like, oh my gosh, I've heard your piece on so many recitals. Can you make a cello version?
I love that.
So now there's a cello version. Yeah. And that's one of the joys of writing for strings, is that some works can really transfer. Others can't, of course. Mm-hmm. But in that particular case, the reason to make the versions is pretty much performer driven. Yeah. For instance, you were so kind to say, Darian, that you played Plea for Peace, which is for obligato.
I love that piece.
Soprano, which is without text. So it's a vocalese. Now, there's a great tradition in music history of vocalese compositions for solo voices and also inside the chorus. But in this case, people have said, oh, can I play the vocalese part on flute? Or can I play it on trumpet? Or can I play it on oboe? Or
Wow.
I really want to do this vocalese part. So basically, anyone who has the soprano's range can just play the vocalese part with the strings, which is either string quartet or string orchestra. So it's really been performer driven. And I'm very grateful to performers when they write me and they're like, oh, I heard your piece and can I, it's such a nice email to receive.
Oh, I loved that piece. I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, I have to do this at some point. It was so moving to listen to. And I love how you create like this sense of space and like this atmospheric sensation. I almost equate to the sense of like environment almost. Like when I'm listening to your music, I feel like it's really inspired by nature. And that might just be me as a listener. I don't know if you would say that's accurate or not. But there's such a sense of like sublimity and sense of like grandeur, almost like when you experience a beautiful place in nature. And then listening to your music, I feel like it embodies that same feeling. That's something I feel. How would you say that's accurate in some ways?
Well, thank you for saying so. I feel music very deeply in my body. I've been playing music my whole life and experiencing it and thinking about it and making it. So I feel that the sources of inspiration are varied and yet certain things are the same. And your point, Darian, about it being inspired by nature, I think is a good one. But I don't like my pieces to be specifically about something. They're more evocative generally. So I might have a piece like ritual incantations or spirit musings or, dance foldings, so something like this, sun dance, sun something, star box, whatever, like, things that are pointing toward nature, but they're not telling you exactly what they are. So, and I think if I'm looking outside my window right now, and a tree is a very good composition teacher. Like how it's organic, how it's growing, how different patterns are evolving, how no two trees are the same, and the energy flow within it and the balance and the relationship between the form and the objects and the energy flow in it, and so on and so forth. So I think to be inspired by nature is very natural because, if you look out at the stars, or we recently had full moon, it's just, there's so much to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like your piece, Brio for Orchestra, that's dedicated to Caroline K. Buxbaum. When you're writing a piece that's dedicated to someone, do you find yourself trying to write in the personality of like that person? Does Brio describe Caroline? Or what influences you with a piece like that? With
Brio, I was so fortunate that the Des Moines Symphony Orchestra asked me to make a piece in her honor. And I was very fortunate that it was commissioned by her two children, Anne and John. And it was a fun occasion to celebrate Kay with a new piece. And so I wanted to do a piece that was full of life and brio. That's why I called it brio, spirit and energy and flair, because Kay is one of the most beautiful, kind, generous, radiant, really brilliant, totally engaging people. I wanted to write something unique and energized. And yet I'm not trying to portray her in the piece, but I just wanted to give her a piece that was of those qualities. Mm-hmm. And the piece is basically about a 12-minute crescendo, and it's all fast. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like big band meets bebop meets Stravinsky meets Ravel or something. If you put all that in a Waring blender and spin it around, I think you'll end up with something along the lines of brio. But it's also very virtuosic. Mm-hmm. It's one of these pieces as a player, which I know you'll both relate to, Darian and Angela, where like the train has left the station. Once it starts, you just hold on for dear life and you just play the piece. It's one of those. Okay. And as a player myself, I like those sometimes. I mean, you don't want to do it every time, but it's a virtuosic showpiece, a little bit like a big fast section of a Stravinsky ballet, or, a section of the Miraculous Mandarin that's all fast, or you know, the fast movement of Shostakovich 10th Symphony or something like that.
And
it just keeps going.
And the map of the forum that I have for that piece, it kind of shows that.
Yeah.
Quite literally. That it just
exactly.
just grows.
It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So it was super fun. Recently, the Chicago Symphony did it in a fantastic performance, and it's been done by about 10 different orchestras. So one of the things that makes me very happy is that the piece is, you know, still very much alive and breathing, because as you both know, writing these big orchestral pieces is a lot of time and energy and effort and love and so forth. And because this is 12 minutes of all fast music, it's equivalent to like a 25-minute regular piece where half of the music's slow.
Oh, yeah.
In other words, you know, when it's all fast music, it's just so many pages and so many notes.
Yeah, I really liked it. And
It's beautiful.
I also wanted to ask, because you've been played by so many chamber groups and so many orchestras, and like you just said, like that piece was played 10 times. And I've heard from a couple composers that it's not the first time a piece is premiered, it's like the ones after that are the hardest to achieve. When did you feel like you got past that point and that your pieces were being performed very regularly?
That's a wonderful question. It is correct, I believe, what you said, though, Darian, that it is very hard to get the second performance, because often people want to commission and they want to do the world premiere. And a lot of pieces are kind of one and done, you know, and composers work so hard at these pieces that maybe 5 years later someone does it once, and then like maybe it's never done again, or it's done once more or something. And it's just so much effort to put in. And sometimes, you know, the world premiere is fabulous with a great recording. You know, sometimes it's fabulous, but you can't use the recording. You can't share it with anybody. Sometimes it's not the world's best performance, but you didn't get you know, it's like hard to get the piece out unless you have a great recording and a great performance. So it's tricky. And, you know, these orchestras these days play so well. These musicians are off the charts good, just tremendously good. So, you know, most often the performances are just dazzling. But I think it's very, very nice when somebody picks a piece out and they're like, oh, we'd like to do that one again. Oh, I heard your piece, this or such and such, you know, Eos or Radiant Circles or Brio or Dance Foldings or any of the orchestra pieces, Astral Canticle and so on, and just programs them. It's the happiest thing to receive.
Yeah. So do you find yourself writing more commissions now in your career?
You know, I have been really fortunate, and I'm aware of my good fortune, and I'm very humbled by it. But I think everything I've written in the past 30 years at least, or 30, maybe longer, 35, has been commissioned. 100% of the pieces. And I don't know how I got so lucky. You know, I'm knocking on wood, hoping that someone will continue to commission me, because I've been so lucky. But I love making music, and I like to make it for a commission. Like in other words, I know who's going to play it. I know who I'm working with. I know when the concert is. I know what else is on the concert. I can envision the evening or the afternoon or whatever it might be, the space in which it will be played or the event. And so often, you know, without a commission, people wouldn't know who would ever play it or where it might be played or when it might be played. And especially these massive orchestral pieces and chorus and orchestra pieces, it's just so much work. You really want to know when it will be played and so on.
Yeah.
So I have been really, really fortunate. And I guess that is any composer's favorite email or phone call when somebody says, we'd like to commission a new work from you.
Yeah. From your Violin Concerto No. 3 that was premiered by the National Symphony Orchestra, do you find yourself writing, when you're writing for any kind of ensemble, do you find yourself writing with that ensemble sound in mind?
Yeah, I do. I try to really get into the vibe of whoever I'm writing for. Like, how do they play? Are they, you know, some players play very bravura. Some players are very kind of like interior and sort of reflective. Other players are fast and flashy and, you know, quick fingers, and other people are, you know, it's just everybody has their own thing. And so I really try to feel the essence, and like I listen to all the recordings, and I try to watch all the videos and talk to the artists, and, you know, what do they want, and try to tailor make something like a good tailor would make a shirt that fits well or something like that. That interests me to try to to do that. Now, on the other hand, you want to make a piece that others want to play.
Yeah.
And might play. So if you can write a piece where you put your soul into it with excellent craft and care and vision and your own voice and hopefully a sense of beauty in the most generic sense, it might be a piece that's, I don't mean it has to be beautiful per se, but like the depth of a cosmic beauty or something like that. Other people can hopefully relate to it and hear it and think, oh, I'd like to play that one. That's the one I want to put on my recital, or that's the one I want to tour with, or if I'm going to make a recording, that's definitely the one I want to add to my album, or whatever it might be. So you kind of want to, make what you feel is right in your heart also. Mm-hmm. And I think one thing that's important to keep in mind, for me anyway, is that I only want to put out pieces that I feel good about. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean anyone else has to like them or play them or anything, but at least I feel that I gave it everything and that I believe that I crafted it for what it is to the best of my ability. And one of the reasons for that is I travel a lot. I mean, the primary reason for that is the obvious reason. But when you travel a lot, you don't really want to fly all the way across the country to hear some piece that you don't even believe in. Mm-hmm. And you get off the plane and you've flown through a thunderstorm and the taxis, you can't get one, and the hotel you can't check in. And then you show up over there and then you're like, oh, I don't really like this piece anymore. Sorry, I wrote it when I was a kid. And then the players have spent all this time learning it. That's just not good for the players, for the any of it, the human energy. Mm-hmm. So I feel like every piece on my website, I really stand by. So if somebody says we're playing this piece and will you fly across the country to come to our recital or something, then I'm like, okay, at least I would feel good about the piece. Mm-hmm. And that's just healthy for my own life, because when you travel as much as I do, it's important to feel that you put your best foot forward.
And in your violin concerto, which I really liked it, first off, I almost felt like listening to it, it didn't feel like this big virtuosic violin concerto. It almost felt more like a chamber piece with like these moments of where the orchestra takes over, and it's almost like there happens to be a violin solo going on in this wonderful orchestral work. I mean, what inspired you to write a piece kind of like in this sense where the violin is a part of the orchestra, not separate from it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I've written 3 violin concertos, and one of my concepts was to make all of them very different. So the first violin concerto, called Spirit Musings, which I wrote almost 30 years ago, and it was premiered with a beautiful recording by the Tanglewood Music Festival, is a piece which really any community orchestra or student orchestra or just community, it's not that technically hard. Mm-hmm. And it's all in 3 movements that last like 14 minutes, fast, slow, fast, and very, very colorful and ornamental. And it's a piece I still really like, actually, even though I was a kid when I wrote it. Anyway, the second violin concerto, called Carol on Sky, was premiered by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Oliver Nussin, who was also my teacher along the way. In any case, the idea with that one was to make an entire concerto in 8 minutes, like of a beginning, a middle, an end, different movements, a cadenza, the whole thing in 8 minutes. And there's this wonderful quote, I can't remember who said it, but they said, "I'm so sorry I wrote you a long letter, but I didn't have time to write you a short letter." And I understand that, because to write a short letter, you really have to craft it and hone it and reduce it and so on and so forth. So with the second violin concerto, like, it's exactly that. I wrote a short letter that's like it's like a perfect little poem or something, where every dot and dash and so on and so forth. So with the third violin concerto to which you referred, it was yet a different thing. And in this piece, we have 6 percussion, 2 harps, celeste, and piano.
Yeah, it was huge. It was awesome.
It's huge. So those 8 players are like force field, and they sit in a semicircle around the back of the orchestra as a kind of team. And so you'll have like vibraphone mixed with marimba, mixed with a crotal, mixed with a high celeste note, mixed with a harp harmonic, and it like flickers around. That's why I was imagining, it's called Juggler in Paradise. Like, there's some kind of dancer or a juggler that's floating through paradise, and you have all these flickering colors. And this is a much larger work. Obviously, it's for full orchestra, but it only lasts 18 minutes. And the idea with this piece was to really have the violin be the protagonist. And so it starts with just solo violin, and little by little, the violin, as it were, seduces or something like that, the orchestra, like a juggler or a magician, like play with me. And it starts to build up and build up and build up more, and then get faster. And then another phrase gets faster and more elaborate. And then it just has this huge, it just keeps going for 12 minutes in this big crescendo. And then there's like a 5-minute, very lyrical, floating, resonant, evocative denouement. And so it's very sort of specifically shaped in terms of like the energy flow. Once you build up that amount of energy, you need, 4 to 5 minutes to let it dissipate back to silence. And so it's very much a showpiece for the violin, because the fiddle, as you said, plays almost the entire piece.
Yeah.
Except for when the orchestra is in the most loud moments, in which case they're hocketing back and forth in a kind of Stravinsky-esque way. You're right that there is a lot of chamber music. I don't like to double. So, I trust that the trumpet will play their note perfectly. It's going to be just perfect. And then, the next note is played by the clarinet, and then that one's a perfect note too. And then instead of having like the trumpet double the clarinet, which doubles the oboe, which doubles by the first violins or something, you end up with something that's a very different kind of feel. This is more like a Serra painting. Every little dot adds up to this huge sonic image, but each player is responsible for their dot. I'm exaggerating slightly, but it's more like that than everybody just like one line that everybody doubles.
Yeah, that's one thing I really liked about it. It didn't feel like this concerto where the orchestra was accompanying the soloist. It felt like they were all, like the soloist is just as involved with this, creating this piece.
Yeah, exactly. In a way that the soloist is the protagonist, as I said, or kind of the spinner of the web. The juggler. It's like the violinist throws out a ball, and then the orchestra picks it up, and then the violinist picks up another ball and starts juggling 2 balls, and the violin picks up the orchestra picks up the second one, and then the violin is juggling 3 balls, and it sort of goes like that. So much of the piece turns out to be quite dance-like and animated rhythmically and full of color and sort of inner life. And then in contrast, the whole long lyrical ending has a whole another kind of feel to it in a way, but all those bells of the 6 percussion, piano, celeste, and 2 harps continue.
Oh, and that was so much fun. There were moments where I was like, am I listening to West Side Story with the percussion? I loved it.
Thank you so much. It's so interesting because I wrote the piece maybe, I'd have to look it up, but 18 years ago or something, a long time ago. And I've been fortunate. It's been played several times, and there's a recording of it. I'm so glad you asked about it, both of you, because in January of 2023, which is very soon from when we're recording this interview, the album is going to be released. And it's a fantastic album of my complete solo violin works, of which there are 9, and Violin Concerto No. 3. So it's kind of a gusty violin disc featuring a phenomenal young violinist and an amazing orchestra. And like, I can tell you more about it, but generally I'm delighted to speak about it. And I hope some folks might, find the album.
I'm sure all the violinists out there are very excited.
Oh, yeah.
I know I am. One thing I wanted to ask you is, how do you keep up with such a high output of works? Like, how do you stay inspired, and what is it like on your off time? Do you even have off time?
I love writing music so much. I could just do it all day, every day. And I love working with players and collaborating and doing rehearsals and making recordings. And I just love it so much. So in a way, none of it's work. It's just my life. It's just who I am. And typically, like always, I'm at my desk by 4 a.m. I just get up really, really early.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't like set an alarm. I got to get something done. Oh my gosh, I got to do this. I got to do that. Blah, blah. And I usually work till at least 10 at night. And I do that 365 days a year. I mean, it's just very, very busy. In terms of the pieces I'm writing, the pieces I want to write, making recordings, editing, lots of travel. I also teach at the University of Chicago, as you mentioned. And I love my students dearly. And in addition, I tried, and over the past 30 years, and continue to work at doing things for other people, like building the Music Now series, or, building the Ear Taxi Festival. And I serve on lots of boards. And all of that's, volunteer work. At the University of Chicago, I built a center for contemporary composition with an ensemble with postdoctoral fellows visiting distinguished guest artists, visiting ensemble. It's like a huge, massive project. So, all of that I'm trying to do to support other artists. So between Gusty the composer, Gusty the teacher, and Gusty the I don't know, the citizen or whatever you want to call it, it keeps me literally swamped every day, all day.
Sounds like you enjoy it though, so that's good.
No, I do. It's just a lot. It's intense. I can promise you that.
I still can't imagine waking up at 4 a.m. and being productive.
Going to bed at 10, 11 probably. Yeah.
No, it's a really good time of day. The sun isn't up yet. I sit at my piano and I watch the sunrise and I improvise and sing. Like, I'm a terrible singer, but like scat and
Nice.
sort of dance the rhythms and embody the music and figure out what I'm doing. So it's good. And I'd love to just stay from 4 and just keep going. But usually by about 10:30, I'll stop, have some food, take a shower, and then either run to the airport or run to the university or
Wow.
start doing other things. So it's kind of like sacred morning time.
Oh, I love that. One other thing I wanted to ask is, how would you describe your compositional style?
Wow.
That's a big question.
I know. Well, you have so many works and they're all so different in a way, but they all sound like something written by Augusta Reed Thomas.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I mean, I don't rewrite the same piece again. I'm definitely a composer where if you commission me, you're going to get an original piece, an Augusta Reed Thomas piece, for better or worse. And it's going to be a new piece, a new adventure. And yet within that, it's definitely my voice. I've been in the same voice. I don't know if these words are very hard to speak about, but I wasn't a composer that was, okay, now I'll be a somethingist. And like next year, everybody's making money as a something elseist. I'm going to jump over on that bandwagon. Or the people who are getting commissions are all like doing this kind of music. Oops, I better do that kind of music. I never followed any fads. I never put peer pressure on anyone. I never took anybody's peer pressure if they were giving it, which, not that anyone was, but you know what I mean? I just have had my own vision since I was a little girl, and I've just stuck with it and tried to get better and better and better at it. So there is definitely a voice there, yet it's not the same piece being rewritten. And I think you asked about how to describe it. Some of the characteristics of it, I could maybe list a few and see if you agree, but I would say the works are hopefully, well, I'll just say what I think. I think they're musical. They're just musical. You can hear that I heard the notes, that I sang them, that I can play them, that there's just a musicality to it, which really matters to me for music. And I think they're very clean and they're intentional. You can tell I meant, like, that bar 42 was meant to be bar 42 because I worked all the way over to it. And it's a logical bar, even if it's a surprise bar, so to speak. I think that they're colorful. They're highly nuanced, which you will know having played the music. I mean, like every dynamics everywhere, articulations, adjectives, tempos.
Yeah.
I mean, the music is like totally crafted and polished, and then polished some more, and then sculpted, and then sanded, and then polished, and then polished. Like, that's the way the scores are. But I like that because if I really give you a clean object, you know what I meant, and then you can like make your magic, and you can be like, okay, now we can take this thing even further. You don't have to call me up on like, where's the decrescendo? What is the tempo?
No, you're very
I don't
clear.
Understand.
Like, if you look at your music, you have all of the markings like on every single measure. That is very clear of what you want, and it's very nice.
Yeah, I just feel like if someone commissions me, that's what they're paying for, really, that they get something crafted. And so I think those are some of the characteristics. And, yet if we look at the Violin Concerto No. 3 that we just spoke about, it's one thing, but let's say we were to talk about a piece called Starbox, which is for 4 percussion. Completely different. And this is for 4 percussionists. And what I love about this piece is that each of them has a setup of instruments in front of them, and each of those setups have different families. So for instance, each of the 4 artists has a mallet, like marimba, vibraphone, Glock or something. And then they each have drums. And then they each have metals, like triangles or crotals or cymbals. And then they each have a noisemaker. And then they each have a chicka. So it's like a quartet of quartets of quartets of quartets. So it's super, super fun. You can like have everyone suddenly be playing the mallets and really quickly have everyone over on the drums, and very, very kind of flexible. So it doesn't sound anything like the violin concerto or like Toff's Serenade. And yet I think if you heard it on the radio, you'd be like, I think that's Augusta Reed Thomas. So that kind of interests me.
Yeah. And I also like that a lot of your pieces say like with dancers if possible. And I think that I really like that you want this like visual representation of your work. What inspires you to put that in your music?
Well, when I write music, I dance.
I love that.
Like I feel it. Like I can sing you everything that I wrote. I mean, not well. I sound like, horrible, but I can really, really feel exactly what I wanted there.
Yeah.
And I have embodied it. I've put it in my own body. So I feel it to be danced. I've always felt that. I hope I get the chance to work with more dancers and choreographers and like people doing recitals, even if it's like a solo recital, and then have like their friend dance. Just to even, it doesn't have to be a huge thing, but just something on the side of the stage. I just think it's so interesting to see music being embodied when it's so clear that the composer embodied it so deeply. I think that's fascinating and then of course the performers embodying it perfectly. So it's just like layers of embodiment that I think are natural extensions of one another.
Do you think because of that you might ever be interested in like writing for a ballet?
Oh yes, I would love to write for a ballet. Yes, without any question. I've done some dance works, and they've been among the most meaningful things, because of this same reason. But I really would love to work more with dancers or writing an original piece or on pieces that exist and so on. Yeah. Like with Starbucks, this percussion quartet of quartets, I would think it'd be so great with 4 dancers.
Oh yeah.
There's like yet another quartet. I think that it would be just such a great show. And of course, when the percussionists are playing, that looks like a ballet too.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
So the whole thing would be, I can just see how this could look.
Yeah. And with visual aspects, I feel like it can make music even more impactful for the audience.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Starbucks was a memorial of Jacob Druckmann, one of your teachers. And according to a lot of my percussionist friends, he's written some pretty big standards for the percussion repertoire. Do you find yourself, when you were writing this piece, with some influences of his compositional styles?
That's a great question. I honestly wasn't being influenced by Jacob's percussion writing style, to be totally honest, because I think I've been writing music for 50 years now, so I'm kind of on the gusty
train,
on the gusty vibe, kind of thing.
As you should
so
be.
I get inspired by lots of composers, but it always ends up just having to be what it feels right in my own ears, in my own stomach. Now, I love Jacob Druckmann's music. Let me be clear, and he was a fantastic teacher. So of course it would have affected me, and so has a million kinds of music. But what I was just trying to do was make an homage to him, in thanks for his having been my teacher, and also because I know he loved percussion. And his son, Danny Druckmann, is a phenomenal percussionist who is in the New York Philharmonic and also on the Juilliard faculty. So it's like a percussion family, so to speak. So when Jacob passed, I was always thinking, all right, I need to make a percussion piece for him. I just have to do it. And then the Kaleidoscope Orchestra commissioned me. And I said, I'd really like to write a percussion quartet. And it was sort of one of those things where sometimes you have to wait a long time to get the project all to line up.
Yeah.
And so that's how that came about.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I'd also like to ask you a little about your experiences as a woman in music. So what would you say the biggest challenge was that you had to overcome as a female composer?
Well, writing music is very hard. I think learning the craft, and I practiced for countless hours as a young person, and learning about music and then working so hard to write pieces and another piece and then make it better and then polish it and make another and another and another. That's the hardest thing. And it has nothing to do with my gender. It really doesn't. I'm not dodging your question, but to be honest, that's the true answer. What is the hardest thing about being a composer, period? I mean, it's just really hard. And then also having the stamina, to write these huge pieces and proofread them and edit and bring them into the world and share them with other people. I mean, it's just so much work. And I feel like I can say without being immodest or modest or anything, just like factual.
Yeah.
I have worked so hard. I have worked so hard for 50 years. Anyone who's close to me is like, Gusta, you have to stop working. You're going to kill yourself. You know, my husband is like, could we please have dinner?
Oh,
Sorry, my email is beeping at me, but
It's all good.
you know, that kind of thing, because I just want to work all day long, and I have. And to be clear, I've done a lot for other people. I don't want to make it sound like I'm just doing Gusty, but you know, it takes a lot to build a body of work as I've built. And my sister told me when she reads my website, she has to take a nap because she's like, I have no idea how you can do all the events in 2022 that are listed on 2022. She said, I just read that. She's like, I read that list and I just collapse. Her point is like, Gusty, you know, you got to stop working so hard. But the thing is, I love it. I would be, if you put me on a vacation, I would be impossible. I would be an absolute nervous wreck. And when I get on the airplane, I work the entire time. I go straight to the airport lounge, and then I like do letters of reference and do emails and correspond with people and send people what they need, and then like work the entire flight proofreading, and then get off and then get on phone calls. And like I just work like all day, every day. I multitask and I line up meetings while I'm in a taxi and just try to use every minute. So I think I've worked really, really hard. I think I've worked as hard as anyone on this planet, no matter what their gender is.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel also very blessed for people having supported my music. And, you know, I'm just going to keep working really hard. And I don't do any social media. I don't do any promotion. I don't do any Twitter. I don't do anything. I can barely just keep my own day going. So I think when people actually reach out to me and they're like, I really like this piece, I really want to play it. Can I, you know, then I know it's real.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been like, can you play my piece? Can you play my piece? So don't you have a concert that would be themed in such a way that you should play my piece? Blah, 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 like, you know, and I receive those emails as a presenter,
Yeah.
obviously. So, you know, I just don't do any of that. I feel like if the body of work is strong and if people can access it, and if they take the time to review, let's say 40 composers or 30 composers, you know, they might actually hit upon my work and then they might program it or something like that or commission it. So I feel like I want to just stay centered to the hard work and to the music.
Yeah.
And then hopefully people will come to me in a way that I don't have to, you know, kind of try to market myself as something or other thing.
Yeah. And I think before, like the last question before we move on to our trivia with our last remaining amount of time is I wanted to ask, I know teaching is a really big part of like your process, like your bio says, and I know there are fewer female composers than male composers in the classical canon. In your opinion, how would you say the best way to go about inspiring the next generation of young female composers?
Well, I've taught a lot of young female composers and a lot of young composers of all genders or sexual persuasions, obviously. And I would just repeat here probably some of the things I would say to them, which is be true to yourself, be very honest in your work, and really look inside as to what it is you want to say in your work, and then say it. And don't feel you have to do what somebody else thinks you should do, because in the end of the day, it's not your work. If you're trying to just mimic someone else or something like that, or please someone. And then I spent a lot of time with my students trying to help them build a great toolkit, like excellence in harmony, excellence in rhythm, excellence in counterpoint, notation, flow, density, instrumentation, texture, dimensionality, and so on and so forth. I mean, a million parameters. So I'm I work very carefully so that my students have an excellent craft. I think before we do the trivia thing you mentioned, I think to be a really good composer, you need three things. And perhaps you need a fourth, which is health, because if you're not healthy, none of us can do anything. But putting that one aside, and of course you need family and love and friends and all that, but just being more technical about it, I think you need three things. You need an excellent imagination, you need an excellent toolkit, musical toolkit, and you need a work ethic. Because you cannot have a career in musical composition and not work hard. At least I can't. I haven't been able to. I've been just working like a crazy person, you know? So I see some students that have this amazing imagination, like crazy good imagination, and the most amazing musical toolkit. They have like harmony and counterpoint and perfect pitch, and they've played 3 instruments and, you know, blah, 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 blah. But they're so lazy, they get nothing done. And then you see somebody else who's got like this amazing imagination and works so, so, so hard, but has no musical background, no musical training, and no toolkit. So then that person should be whatever they're going to be, an architect, a poet, a lawyer, a dancer. You know, it's just music is not their toolkit. And then you see other people who have an amazing musical toolkit and they work really, really, really hard, just stunning. But they have no imagination. They're just doing every cliche in the book. They're just copying every latest fad, and everything's derivative, and there's nothing fresh about their work. So then you see a student that has all 3. Fabulous imagination, amazing musical toolkit, and they work hard. So I like to select students for admissions that have all 3. And then I like to work with them for 6 years and support them vastly in the profession to help them get awards and prizes and commissions and so on and so forth. And not only my students, I would say the same about everybody. So I think that's sort of a nuanced answer, but
No, I love that.
It's sometimes I'll say to a student, your rhythm is really boring.
Nice.
You know, like it
The
just
honesty's
is. So,
great.
you know, and they'll be like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to beef up that toolkit for the next 6 months. And then I give them exercises and projects. And then 6 months later, they're like, oh, Gusty, thank you so much. I'm so glad you told me. Now I'm so much better at rhythm. And I'm like, okay, now what next? Counterpoint, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Or color or timbre or density, you know. And so we literally identify things and work on them on the side, like as exercises on the side of what we might be doing in a particular piece. And I feel like I can really help people put tools in their toolkit. And I have done so. And also, you know, even just studying music by lots of composers, you can learn a lot of tools. But when you have to put it in your own hand, so to speak, your own body, you learn a lot.
Yeah, I love that. And you seem so much fun to
Yeah,
work with. I'm like, oh, I
absolutely.
wish I was a composer. That we'd have such
Same.
a good time. But now we're going to close out our podcast episode with the fun little trivia that we like to do. So what this is just 3 questions for you, and then I'm going to ask Angela 3 questions, and whoever answers the most, you know, wins the trivia for this episode. It's not a big deal, but it's just a little fun thing we like to do. So we're going to start with you, Ms. Thomas, and we're going to start with our first question. According to your bio, what year did you win the ASCAP Rudolph Award?
I have no idea.
I love asking these questions.
It would be a long time ago. Like, let's see. I would guess 1990.
Oh, kind of close. 1999.
Oh, 90. See, I'm hopeless at this. Okay, I lose on that one. Next.
Another one that is going back to your bio. All right. On your website, this is according to your website because it said selected fellowships. So I'm assuming there's way more, which is super impressive. But according to your website, you have how many fellowships listed?
I have absolutely no idea. I literally
I'm sorry.
don't know.
I can give you multiple
else-
choice.
Okay, give me multiple choice.
Okay.
Yes.
Was it 5, 20, 13, or 9?
Fellowships? Boy, that's hard because some things are called fellowships, some are residencies, some are this is and that's. I don't know. I'll go for 13.
That's right. That's how many you had listed. I remember counting. All right. Last one. Which famous composer has 2 skulls in his grave?
2 skulls?
Yeah, there are 2 of them because his head was removed and replaced, and then it was later added. They didn't remove the fake skull. It's a famous composer.
With 2 skulls in their grave.
Yeah,
Man,
I-
you guys are digging up some trivia.
I can give
see,
you
all I
multiple choice
ever
as
do
well.
Music. All I ever do is just keep writing music, so I don't know. I'm terrible at trivia.
I'll give you some multiple choice if you like.
Give me multiple choice.
Okay. Is it Handel, Haydn, Bach, or Beethoven?
Well, I would guess Beethoven.
No.
Because of there's the famous bust of Beethoven everywhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what's making me think Beethoven, maybe they put a bust of his head in his grave or something. I don't know. No, I don't know.
Well, it's not Beethoven. I was trying to think of the greats. It's actually Haydn. It was Joseph Haydn. So,
Wow.
Fun fact
Sorry.
there.
Facts.
But I didn't know that either. But I was like Googling interesting facts about composers, and I was like, someone stole his brain.
Yeah.
All
You
right.
see there, I'm just like hopeless at this, but let's do Angela's
Okay.
part of it.
Oh,
All right.
gosh.
And if you know any of them, she would welcome help.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. What is something that Bach and Handel have in common? First, here's your multiple choice.
Okay.
Were they born on the same day, blinded by the same surgeon, convicted of plagiarism, or performed at the same church?
Wow, some of them are really juicy. I feel like the last one's a safe bet, though. Well, no, actually, who are the composers?
Bach and Handel.
What's the list one more time? The choice?
Born the same day, blinded by the same surgeon, convicted of plagiarism, or performed at the same church?
I really don't know. I'm gonna guess. So I'm gonna say it's C.
Convicted of plagiarism?
Yeah, I don't know.
No.
I don't believe they were, but you know.
They actually were blinded by the same surgeon.
Blinded by the
They
same
had
surgeon.
botched cataract surgery.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
All right. Now, so, Ms. Thomas, we like to play on the fact that I'm a string player and she's a brass player. So, what are the F holes on string instruments?
Oh, the F holes on string instruments?
Yeah.
Oh, they're little.
Yeah, those little
thingies.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Oh, that makes sense.
sound
They're called
comes out of them.
F-holes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So you kind of got it right.
Nice.
All right. Now, last question. How many violin concertos did Mozart write?
Concertos did Mozart write?
I'm sure Augusta Reed Thomas knows.
Yes, do you know?
How many concertos?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's hard.
I know.
I really don't know. I want to say it's in like the concertos.
It's actually probably not as high as I think you're thinking based
really?
on watching your brain work.
Fair enough. We're gonna go with 32.
You want to take that down?
Down?
Yeah, take that way
I don't
down.
know.
Way down.
I believe in him. You could do it.
Close, but still wrong.
Well,
It is 5.
5.
Oh no. So like, did we? Are we tied?
Yeah, are we tied?
Yeah, we are tied. All right.
No.
Let me think of a tiebreaker off the top of my head. Oh no. All right. How many ballads did Chopin write? The
4.
Oh.
But he wrote 4 ballades.
Dang,
Yep,
she
you're
won.
right.
Okay. I was gonna guess 4.
I didn't even
See,
give you
if
the
you
multiple
asked me-
choice.
If you ask me like a music question, like that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
that's my jam.
Nice. Oh, dang.
I'll if we interview again, I'll keep that in mind. Unless Angela really, really wants to win and she
Yeah.
writes the questions.
We'll see.
All right. Well, thank you for
Yes, thank
talking
you.
to us. We really enjoyed talking to you. It was so inspiring, and
Informative.
as a huge fan, it really made not just my day, but my just as a fan of yours, it really made my life as a musician. I was like, oh, I talked to Augusta Reed Thomas.
Yeah.
Thank you both. I'm fans of you all, and I'm just so honored to be part of this. And I hope that we can make music together. Well, thank you so much.